Hello, all, and welcome to the ninth episode of the No Name Cinema Society. I am one of your hosts. I am Jonathan Betzler, and I am now on the East Coast here in New York City, traveling for a little bit. I'll be on the East Coast for the next few weeks. So tonight we're going to talk about the film Hot Pursuit. Every once in a while, when a very big movie shows up, something like the Avengers, a lot of distributors will run away from not only the week that the Avengers comes out, but the week after it comes out. And except for one bold distributor decided to release this film, Hot Pursuit, and it was the only real wide release of the week, knowing it would come in second to the Avengers' second weekend. But it turned out to be a smart move because it made significantly more money than it would have made if it had come out any other time, I think. So that's the film for discussion tonight, and my co-host. First, we're going to start with it's sort of a momentous moment tonight. Our very first drunk panelist, ladies and gentlemen, hotel lounge himself, Dave Joseph. Dave, how you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. I wish it were actually drunk, but no, it's a good time. It's a good night. It's a great night in Detroit.
I don't know why he's denying it now, but, and also normally we're 2,975 miles away. Tonight we are 18.6 miles away. I'm in the Bronx. He's in Brooklyn. J Money, what do you have to say for yourself?
I don't know why you assume that Davie Jo would be the first drunk panelist. I think it's easier to describe if any of us were actually sober first, you know.
I mean, I guess that's.
Anybody who watches that Oscar show will know that somebody was definitely very drunk that night.
You talking about James Franco?
I don't know. Yeah, James Franco.
And Davie Jo, this hat's for you. Brand new hat. Before I came to New York, I stopped by Philadelphia, went to the Phillies game on Tuesday night, and picked up this hat. You are a native, are you not?
Central Pennsylvania, and I used to have a Sunday season ticket package for the Phillies. They're not having a very good year this year, but you know.
Well, they are rebuilding.
They're trying. They're trying, man.
So, J Money.
Yes. Let's talk about Hot Pursuit. Hot Pursuit.
Yeah, why don't you give us a little summary?
Sure thing. Overeager, perky San Antonio cop Reese Witherspoon is tasked to escort mob wife Sofia Vergara to Dallas to testify against her husband's former boss, a Colombian crime lord. As you might expect, hijinks and mayhem ensue.
All right, it's time for opening thoughts. Davie Jo, you get to go first. One sentence, two sentences or less.
We watched 3 movies this week, and I enjoyed this one the most.
Okay. All right, so J Money.
Not good.
He's brief, ladies and gentlemen. I have something positive to say, and that is the outtakes were much funnier than the movie itself.
That's funny because I think the outtakes were indicative of why this was not a good movie. But go on.
No, I mean that's pretty much all I got. Davie Jo, do you want to say why you like this movie?
Oh, no, I didn't like it. I did not like it. No. No, I did not like it. It's bad. It's really bad.
Okay, do you want to say why?
Yeah, all right. I mean, look, I've thought a lot about this movie. I think basically what you had Reese Witherspoon being silly. That's basically the premise of the movie. Is Reese Witherspoon is silly, and Sofia Vergara did her thing. She did, she did what she does, and I think that they both were fine, and I think that the direction was fine. I think that what you have on your hands here is just a horrendous script. And a comedy that just isn't funny, and that's a problem.
It does have no laughs. I just realized I forgot to take my glasses off. So I did it right now. J Money, how do you want to break it down?
Well, you know, as you have tried to do for so many weeks, I will try to say something positive to start with. I think that this movie is the kind of thing that involves people that are actually talented. I think that Reese Witherspoon can be funny. I think that she's not necessarily a comedian, but she's a comedic actress. I think that Sofia Vergara can be funny as well. I think that they both have, the ability to be competent at comedy. I just think that this movie, unfortunately, seemed to think that just throwing them together in a jar like two bugs meant they were going to, make something happen, and it didn't quite work out that way for them.
Yeah, I mean, this film was filled with a lot of contrivances, and a lot of times, like, I'm known for not really enjoying comedy, and I think what you can see right here, like with Sofia Vergara channeling her Hispanic version of Fran Drescher in this photo here, it sort of sums up the issues with the movie. But I mean, like, just because you're making a comedy does not give you license to do whatever. In terms of story structure. And, a screenwriter needed, this is just one example, a screenwriter needed to make sure they had no access to communication. It's a challenge for all screenwriters in modern day and age. So in that moment that the phone fell out of her hand while driving, movie lost me.
That was so contrived. I totally agree with you, yeah.
So, yeah, the movie lost me for good at that point. And there's all other sorts of things that happen that they're like contriving to put them in a situation that has potential for funny. But if a screenwriter wanted to challenge themselves, they could find very natural ways to do that, or more natural ways to do that, instead of really forcing the hand time after time, and putting them in silly situations where they had to kiss and pretend to be lesbians. And none of that felt natural or anything.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting that, for me, I was thinking throughout this movie that like they could have gotten away with so much. Plot-wise, this is definitely trying to be a screwball comedy one way or the other. I can forgive any silly plot contrivances, any kind of pointless sort of exposition, whatever, if there's actual jokes in the movie. And unfortunately, there just really weren't any actual jokes in this movie. Everything was kind of based on a tired cliche. You either had Sofia Vergara doing sort of a tired cliche of, outsized Spanish personality. I think you mentioned, wait, who did you mention before?
I said Hispanic version of Fran Drescher.
Yeah, Hispanic. My thinking was like she was somewhere between Lucy Ricardo and the Bumblebee Man from The Simpsons. She was kind of like this, I everywhere, like a little Charo-esque kind of situation. And I'm kind of, I feel like it's unfortunate that she's given that, because I sense that she actually has a lot more talent than people are willing to kind of let her stretch or something.
I mean, she's proven that on Modern Family time.
Yeah, exactly. Although Modern Family is in some ways a similar kind of character, but at least with Modern Family, she's given a moment to actually reflect. She's given a moment to kind of stretch her character a little bit more.
She's three-dimensional in Modern Family, and nobody is three-dimensional in this movie at all.
Nobody's three-dimensional in this movie at all, unfortunately. And I feel like with Reese Witherspoon, she can be funny, but I tend to think her humor derives from more of a quiet charm and quirkiness, and in this one, she was almost playing on the spectrum. It felt a little bit too often too zany for her character.
Too goofy. Yeah, that was my other note.
Really goofy. And then to your point about like some of the bad humor in this, I was thinking like there's clearly this trend right now of movies that are sort of female-centric and female comedic-centric. And this movie was interesting because as much as like there are two sort of, there's two main female co-stars, it was definitely written by men. And a lot of the jokes seem to actually have...
Time out. I didn't hear that last phrase. It was certainly what? I didn't hear that.
It was written by two men. It was written by these two male TV writers. And it felt like a lot of the jokes were sort of dude-gazy, sort of like dude impressions of female jokes as opposed to actual jokes that are coming from the women themselves. I think partly that's because, Reese Witherspoon and Sofia Vergara are not stand-ups. I don't feel like they had a chance to really kind of develop material for their own voices. I feel like they were just given material. And I think in other films that we might compare this to, that involves usually some actual comedian who is, able to actually put her own material into this project. But I think with this, it was just a lot of jokes about, female hygiene, about high-heeled shoes, about women being crazy. I mean, the fact that there was actually kind of a pill fight scene to me was just ridiculously embarrassing.
And yet, in the movie coming out this week, Pitch Perfect 2, there is, I don't know if you've seen the trailer, but there's a joke of a pillow fight scene, and Anna Kendrick walks in the trailer, so I'm not giving it away, and she says, "You guys are setting back women 30 years." And then Rebel Wilson says, "This is the only cardio I'll do." So they sort of picking fun, almost a Hot Pursuit.
Right, exactly. I just feel like a lot of things were mishandled about this, and I kind of wonder how this project really came to be in general,
Yeah, Yeah, well, Reese Witherspoon was the producer on it, and she develops a lot of her own projects. She develops a lot of good projects. You guys both know how I feel about Wild.
Yeah.
Now, it was directed by a woman.
It was directed by a woman.
And Davie Jo, I'm curious because I disagree with you. Why you thought that the direction was good?
Well, you know, it's funny. There's one scene that just sort of sticks out to me that was, I think, the only good scene in the movie was the scene on the bus. When they're I thought there's a scene where they actually do some physical comedy and
we both got awesome reactions there, J-Money.
Here's the thing. This is not fair because this is a terrible movie and you're making me talk about a positive of it, and it's not.
You said it. I'm going based on your own right. Comment. You said it was good direction, and I thought that was a strange thing to say.
Well, here's the thing. Well, let me ask you, because you're the only one with any actual practical experience here. I mean, what else? At some point, a script is so bad, and the material is so bad. What can you do with it? I mean, what can you do with it?
Improv, for one. I mean, nothing felt loose about this film. And so probably would have addressed it and opened it up a little bit. I mean, like, even, made the gesture to sort of give the actors the freedom. I'm going to throw away these pages, and let's just see what happens.
JB, to your point earlier about the outtakes, I mean, that to me was like why I thought, well, this is definitely why this didn't work. I didn't think the outtakes were funny at all. I thought they were just basically them flubbing their lines, which to me is like, nobody seemed to be having fun on the set. They clearly were not screwing around. They just kind of made mistakes.
I mean, I think I said it as a a burn thing to say, but I mean, like, I do remember I didn't laugh once during the movie, and I wish I could remember. I saw it on Sunday. I don't remember laughing once during the movie, but I remember laughing once or twice during the outtakes. Wish I could remember the exact ones. It was something that Reese Witherspoon was doing.
Yeah.
But I don't remember.
I'll tell you where I laughed. I laughed, and I remember it because it only happened one time. It was the remote control when she. Maybe it's because I'm in hotels so much, and I'm always kind of skeeved by the remote control. When she's like sticking the remote control in her mouth, and she's like, that's like a toilet seat. That's disgusting.
The only scene that I thought was, I mean, like, I wish they developed it more, but the one scene I thought was well executed was when, it's sort of a surprise, but I'm going to try not to go, I mean, like, when he winds up being completely random and useless, the love interest dude, and the way he's revealed, I guess, in the truck. I thought that was I was a little surprised by that. They didn't telegraph it at all. I thought that was interesting, but that's the one moment in the movie that stands out. In fact, J Money, I would say you've given the movie a little too much credit with your with your set design there. That's all I'm going to say. I think maybe your set is looking has too much going on.
Wow, you think so? Yeah.
And I'm usually the nice one on this show. This hat's so new. The shape isn't working out for me. I feel like it's a little bulky on the head, but
no, it just makes your head look bigger. It's good. It's good.
You like it because my head's not big enough.
Not big enough. Yeah, obviously. I guess what I would say is that I wanted to like this movie, and I wanted to like them. And, I feel like with movie criticism especially, like evaluating comedies is one of the hardest things, and also maybe one of the most pointless things. Because regardless of what you think about how successful it was of a movie, if there are people that are laughing at it, then it's successful to a certain degree. And I was in a theater that had, I don't know, maybe 20 people. I would say the majority of them were middle-aged couples or teenage girls. And they were definitely laughing. They weren't necessarily laughing at a continuous pace, and they weren't like laughing with guffaws, but they found it amusing. So it clearly worked on some level for these people.
Yeah, people were definitely laughing in my theater as well, and I was.
Me too.
I would say that I'm going to give credit to the distribution company because I think they knew they'd a clunker, but they squeezed more money out of it by putting it on May 8th than I think they would have made at any. And I meant to look it up before the show, but it's one of the things that slipped through my mind. I made so many notes, but I forgot to write down the exact distributor. But they made a smart move in being up against the second weekend of Avengers and getting some spillover from sellouts. It worked out. financially, because I think if they opened it in any other time of year, it would have been a huge disaster. Child 44 would have made more money.
Let's not get crazy.
I also, I mean, like, I was very critical of Anne Fletcher's first film because she's a choreographer first, which is interesting given some of the things we're going to talk about later on. And her very first film was Step Up. I don't know if you guys watched the film that gave us Channing Tatum, but I did, and I was pretty critical of the film overall. But Anne Fletcher came around, and she's made several films since then. None of them have been dance films. But one of the films was really strong, one of her comedies. And I don't normally like comedies because of a lot of the things that Hot Pursuit did wrong. But one I did like was a film called The Proposal. And that is an Anne Fletcher film that I thought was pretty decent. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
No, I haven't seen that. She also did 27 Dresses, right?
Yeah, that I can't defend. I mean, I think the one film that stands out in Anne Fletcher's resume is The Proposal. But quite honestly, I mean, The Proposal works because of its leads, I think.
Yeah.
Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds and the supporting character played by Betty White are really what makes the movie fly. I mean, the other thing you mentioned, what else would a director do? I mean, I also might try mixing up the angles a little bit. I mean, like, I feel like some of the angles weren't inspired, and
you know, I felt like this was like she was building a sandwich like she would at Subway. It was kind of very perfunctory. Sort of this goes here, this goes here. There really wasn't any kind of stylistic, ideas going on behind it. It was very cut and dry, and it felt almost TV movie-ish for me. So,
and yeah, just the plot itself. I mean, you talked about the screenplay, and in that I think you mean like the structure and the dialogue. But in this case, I mean, the plot, the premise is extremely trite. The drug lord, dragging cross country to testify. In fact, the movie was so bad that I there was a certain network that asked me to write something, a female-driven thriller, and I was coming up with it, and I had something going. Maybe I wrote like 50 pages, and it was a road movie, and I've decided Hot Pursuit was so bad I feel like I don't want to work on this road movie anymore.
No, you got to work on redemption. I mean, I guess I would say that a plot shouldn't destroy a movie one way or the other. A plot can destroy movies certainly, and this one had a terrible plot. But like, if it had actually been funny, it really wouldn't matter that much. It really is what you could.
One of the things that I was gonna say next week, because I was thinking about the classic movie I'm gonna have next week, is movies are like a cake. I've always said, and they're done in layers. And the very bottom layer is the story. If the story doesn't work, the rest of it topples. That's the foundation. And then you start talking about other things like, I think performances, quite frankly, is the next thing up. And then editing is probably third. And things like cinematography and production design and symbolism, those are higher layers in the cake. They don't necessarily make or break your cake, but the story is the bottom premise, and it needs to be solid.
But I'm gonna go with J Money there, though. I think that with a comedy, if there's jokes, if it's funny, I think it can survive a bad plot. This just didn't have it. I mean, it was obviously a terrible story. I mean, no question.
I don't think so. I don't think. I mean, like.
Well, I mean, how many comedies can you think of? Well, I don't know. Maybe you're the wrong person to ask, JP, because you're not really big into comedy. But I guess I would say I can think of a number of comedies which really don't have that much of a plot, which I still think are successful as.
Well, I mean, I wasn't saying plot as it was so much like premise. I mean,
okay, all right.
The very like concept. And am I echoing?
No.
Okay. The very concept, and I mean the comedies that I think are strong in the last 20 years. I mean, the strongest comedy I think that I've seen in the last 20 years is 40-Year-Old Virgin. And then other ones that I've liked include Role Models, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. And I thought Neighbors was pretty good last year, and Ted. Those are the ones, and I feel like they all have, I mean, stories that may be recycled, but are still good stories. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying, and I think it definitely helps. But I mean, God, I mean, I can't really speak intelligently about them because it's been so long since I've seen them. But I
And
think back to like
had lots of drinks in the hotel lounge.
I think back to like Martin and Lewis movies and
Look at you!
maybe
Look at you! Is this Davie Jo referencing old movies?
I don't know.
Name one Martin and Lewis movie.
I remember just watching them with my mom on AMC and thinking they were funny, but I don't remember any great stories or intricate plots.
At least something like this isn't Martin and Lewis, but at least the Nutty Professor was something it's original.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the Naked Gun. I mean, was the story that big of a deal? I don't know.
I mean, parody movies are completely different. Yeah, I mean, the story was there because it was parodying. It was a satire of every other movie of its kind.
Okay. All right. I see your point. Yeah.
Hey guys, how do you feel about moving on? So it's so early, but.
Well, it is what it is.
I think we should.
Do you have more you want to say on Hot Pursuit?
No, I do think that the bus scene is it's worth watching on cable when it's on USA someday. Check it out. Don't pay anything for it though.
It's a silly, dumb scene.
I hope that this is not the start of a franchise. That's all I would say.
It's not. You're not. You're not.
I sincerely doubt it. All right, can we move on now?
We can move on.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. Woohoo! Indie Spotlight. This is very exciting. But I'm a little angry with my boy over here, Davie Jo, because I don't think you said that Hot Pursuit was the best movie you saw this week. So
that's not exactly what I said. What's the one that I like the most?
Still, I find that offensive.
It's not the best film. I can't even go that far.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't explain Davie Jo in this situation.
Anyway, well, this is like a Chappie S thing. But tonight's Indie Spotlight is a stylish, compelling film.
Put.
What?
Well put. That's a great analogy. Thank you.
Not technically an analogy, but I told him we had our first drunk panelist tonight. So the Indie Spotlight tonight is the compelling and stylish film, Iranian film, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. And I think, for the sake of this, it came out last year. I think we can say that it's an Iranian vampire film. So I saw it a couple months ago. I recommended it to these guys. What'd you guys think? Davie Jo, I'm actually gonna let you go first because you were whining.
I did not enjoy the film.
Is it too moody?
That's good. That's a good question. It's not. I don't know if it's moody so much. It seems self-indulgent. I mean, I like a style movie, and this is definitely a style movie, but it is I think definitely maybe a bit pretentious and horribly boring. Not a whole lot happens. It's incredibly slow. I particularly liked the use of slow motion in music to make an hour and 50-minute movie seem like a 5-hour movie. I didn't like it. But I'll tell you what, though. I will say this. I liked the fact, because I'm not capable of being completely negative about any movie, I think. I did like the fact that it kind of went away from sort of traditional horror movie tropes where, anyone who does anything bad ends up dead, and that's a feather in its cap. And I am kind of interested in seeing where this director goes next.
She is making a big budget film next. I think it's called Bad Blood. But anyway, I'm a little irritated with your comments, but I'm going to let them slide. I mean, I don't necessarily think. I mean, I myself am known for having sort of a Proustian pace in my work, so I appreciate a film that's a slow burn. I think that it's just a different approach, and I think it was appropriate for this movie. I think just because a movie is slow doesn't make it bad automatically. J Money, what do you your first time?
I personally love this film. I guess what I would say is that in terms of the pacing of it, there are so many like independent films that do take a lot of time and sort of linger on their subjects and let you sort of explore the environment. And this is a kind of movie, given the genre, that it actually seems incredibly appropriate to do that, because in a sense it really builds some sort of tension. It's not so much about, you know, feeling like, oh, what's going to happen in this moment. It's not so much about necessarily being concerned about there being, you know, something that'll jump out at you, as much as it just builds an atmosphere to this movie that is creepy, authentically. And it's also really, I think, ultimately fascinating. It was also one of the most beautiful black and white films I've seen in a long time. I mean, I think that everybody gave Ida this past year a lot of props, and it was another black and white movie, but this, to me, beat that easily.
That's interesting.
What? Say that last part again?
I was saying that I thought this was one of the most beautiful black and white movies I've seen in a while. I think that I was saying that Ida won Best Foreign, and a lot of people made a case for how beautiful that black and white was for that movie, and I thought that this was better, in fact.
Oh, wow.
I thought that I thought that the tones of this were so much more rich, and I thought that the darkness in this played such a larger part of the role in this movie that it really, to me, worked very well.
I haven't seen Ida, so I can't necessarily agree about that. But I love what you say about the way they use the blacks. I think that's spot on. And I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the performances. This is Sheila Vand as the titular girl. I thought she was outstanding. She was really, really strong. And you know, adding layers to this, she was a complex vampire, as it were.
Yeah, you know, I guess for me, the thing I actually I don't have a problem with, but I guess for me the point against this, if anything, is that it doesn't. I don't think it really necessarily had to be a genre pick. I guess I feel like there's a whole subsection of vampire films that are basically about these kind of vampires, about sort of moody, sort of lost soul kind of vampires. I mean, there certainly wasn't a lot of necessarily original thought behind what was happening in this film.
But I think it was sort of audacious in the sense that, you know, given the politics around the Middle East, you know, having a woman play this character, I mean, I think it had sort of like external meaning in that regard.
No, I think that imbues it with a certain layer of I don't know, almost wit to it that you wouldn't get from other movies. But I also think that it was kind of, you know, I guess I feel like it definitely falls in line with other things that we've seen from that point of view. But you know, the other thing about that that's interesting to me, JB, is that since it wasn't filmed in Iran, there's a whole interesting sort of American texture to this film that I actually really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the fact that there were so many American artifacts that were in this film, even though it was supposedly set in Iran.
I was so compelled by the film, I actually didn't notice a lot of that.
Really? See, for me, it very much felt like, I mean, it was shot in Bakersfield. It very much felt like sort of a post-industrial American desert town. The guy drives.
I bought it for Iran. Like, I bought it.
Well, I buy it from Iran, but I guess I feel like there was something like the fact that he's driving a classic American car, the fact that he's dressing kind of in a James Deansian way, he's sort of a greaser. Like, there were so many qualities of this, and the fact that there was also some American music. There were so many things in it that I thought really. I love that juxtaposition. I love the fact that they brought in these textural elements, even though it was an Iranian film ultimately.
I'm not sure how purposeful that was, but speaking of American involvement, I mean, one of the other performances I really enjoyed was someone I've worked with and know, Dominic Raines as the pimp. I can't get a better picture of him. I thought, now I don't like Dominic as a dude.
Like anyone you work with? I mean, seriously, come on.
Sure I do, but not the ones that are successful, strangely enough. But I mean, I acknowledge.
Awesome.
I mean,
I respect that.
What's that?
I respect that.
Thanks. I mean, like, you know, he was just difficult, you know, and you know, I guess because he felt like he had some success with this film that he had, you know, that he had that right to be difficult.
Right, he's a big star.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I don't know. I ran into a party actually a couple weeks ago, and we talked for a little bit. But you know, he also has that vibe of like, I'm cooler than you. You know what I mean? I mean, everyone's really cooler than me, but you don't need to. You know, I'd rather you not let me know it.
He had one of the coolest tattoos I've ever seen in the movie, at least. I love the fact that it was.
I know he didn't.
That's not real. But I thought it was a great performance, though. I was really impressed with him and all that he brought to the table in this character. My one complaint about the film is I do feel like, and maybe this is to the point of Davie Jo, and he just didn't articulate it this way, but maybe I just thought maybe the subplots added up a little too much. You know, to the point where I mean, especially like with the dad character that was strung out, and his whole sideline, I didn't feel like that paid off in a way that made it worthwhile, and that's typical of, I want to say, Europeans. It's typical of European cinema, and although this technically wasn't a part of European cinema, it sort of had that vibe and mood. I felt like that was a sidetrack. This is not a film that's about story structure necessarily. Essentially, it's a mood piece, I think, and and that's all well and good, but I do think that those moments could have been better spent. I'd rather spend a little more time with the vampire, with Sheila Vand, than the father. I thought the kid was okay, like that because that sort of paid off a little bit, and I like the James Deany guy.
But this was definitely, I think it was definitely Sheila Vand. I think that she transformed herself so much in this movie that in a great way. I mean, the scene where she's interacting with that kid, I think is legitimately kind of creepy and scary. Like, and you see her go through.
So well done, and that's what gives me hope about Anna Lillian Poor as a director. That there's something more than just style to her.
Yeah.
Subtext in that scene.
I want to challenge Davie Jo on this. Davie Jo, why were you huffing about my comparison to Ida?
The cinematography.
Ida's an incredible film. Here's the thing, you know, and I definitely your comparison is reasonable, and in that you were speaking specifically of the use of the dark tones, and the movie is beautiful. It looks great. What struck me about Ida though was the use of sort of depth. And the scene that I'm thinking of, I don't want to go into too much detail because it's kind of like the biggest scene in the movie of Ida, but it's kind of a movie. Whenever a movie when there's movement from front to back, or from wherever there's the use of depth, and the climactic scene in Ida I thought was just so beautiful and so shocking and well done.
I thought the exteriors for This Girl Walks Home at Night, there was a lot of depth. I thought there was a lot, especially like the way that they framed streets, like all the way down. Yeah. Not so much in the interiors.
I guess Davie Jo. I guess what I would say is that I also really liked Ida a lot, and I also totally see what you're saying about this. I think for me it was just the fact that this movie really utilized the darkness in a way that I really appreciated. This movie kind of got, I don't know, I don't want to bust out like an art term, but the idea of chiaroscuro, sort of a shading element to this idea that brings an extra darkness to it.
We got highbrow. We got highbrow.
I'm not going to pretend to understand that, but no, I'm gonna look that up. And,
I guess what I would say is that Ida to me was a gray movie more than a black and white movie, and that seemed really appropriate for a lot of the things that were happening in Ida. Whereas this one was about black and white, and this one was about the darkness and the light, which I really appreciated as well.
Would you say? I mean, I haven't seen Ida.
I can accept that.
Would you say that the cinematography for Ida was, in and of itself, more aesthetically pleasing, whereas the cinematography for Girl Walks Home at Night was more embroiled into the narrative? Was it more a part of the film instead of just going for an aesthetic beauty?
I think that's accurate. I think that's right. I think that the black and white aspect of Girl Walks Home at Night it's almost part of the plot. I know I've been critical of the movie, but that's not a criticism. That was I think definitely intended in part of it. It's a calculated decision, and it worked well. I mean, the movie looks great. I mean, it does look great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you didn't like it, my man. I mean, but to say that you enjoyed Hot Pursuit more is
no, I did because it's just painful, man. It's a pill. Like, it's a long.
I want to move on soon, but let me throw this at you because movies that you think are boring. Girl Walks Home at Night versus Boyhood.
Girl Walks Home at Night is way better, way better.
For all the grief you gave me about Chappie, I just want to point out that the more that you denounce Boyhood, I think the more that you're losing credibility with our audience. I'm just gonna.
I mean, here's the thing. Basically, my goal here is for people to get kind of a read on me, and they can kind of base their. It's not so much that they're going to agree with me or disagree with me, but they're going to.
Yeah, no, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
No, they're going to see where I'm coming from, and they're going to be able to get a gauge of how they feel about the movie based on what I say. I mean, I've talked to other people that didn't like Boyhood. We're out there, man. There's just not that many people that are willing to admit it.
No, look.
You're a trailblazer, Davie Jo.
Davie Jo's a populist. I'm a snob, and JB's always been, I don't know, some eccentric weirdo. So
I'm not a populist.
A jam sandwich.
If I was a serious populist, I wouldn't be talking about how great Ida was.
Well, okay, fair point. Well, oh no, wait a minute. It did win the Oscar. I feel like that does kind of qualify for populism.
Well, that's true, but I'll give you that. But no, it doesn't. No.
All right, guys, it's time to move on. And for moving very quickly, 36 minutes in, we're already at our classic movie screening of classic movie of the week. And Davie Jo, now I'll admit to you, I told these guys what the movie was going to be in advance so that they could watch it. And Davie Jo, I'll admit to you that I have been critical of this film for a long time. But last screening, we screened it maybe 2 weeks ago. I think you guys saw the picture of it on Facebook of our screening. Yeah. I enjoyed it a little more this time. And this week's classic movie was Saturday Night Fever, and it's an important film for many reasons, and mainly because from a populist point of view, like the movies that I screen, these classic movies have some sort of historical significance, not necessarily always creative. But I mean, this movie was a zeitgeist film at a time when Star Wars and Annie Hall and Close Encounters were all out in theaters. You know, the film that everybody was really talking about was Saturday Night Fever, and I think it's particularly interesting historically because it captures a moment in time that actually didn't last.
Yeah.
You know, this very sort of fleeting picture, and I think I've always felt that it was a little silly because disco itself historically feels a little silly. Had you guys seen it before this particular screening?
No.
Yeah, I had, but I saw it like a long time ago. And I was glad that I ended up rewatching it for this because there were a lot more things I saw this time around.
That was my experience as well. This is my fourth time seeing it, and actually my second time screening it. I screened it in 2010 in Los Angeles as well, different group. And I actually got more out of it the most time, and the discussion was outstanding. And I don't know if we're really going to be able to touch on all the things that we touched on in our live discussion with the in-house group, but. Davie Jo, it's your first time, so you get to go first.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a dark film, man. I mean,
yeah,
it's not what I expected. First of all, I think it's close to a tour de force by John Travolta. I mean, he
was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor.
Yeah, and you know, I kind of. The way I started the show is completely accurate because this is not an enjoyable watch for me. I did not have fun with this. It's a great film, but I have serious problems with it because I'm not entirely sure. Look, if this movie came out yesterday, I would have thought that it's sort of a commentary, a social commentary on sort of like the dark side of club life or something like that.
I think it's more than just club life, for what it's worth.
Sure. Okay, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot more going on there. There's certainly there's.
I think it's a whole youth of America type.
And I think in religion, I mean, it's a deep movie. Let's hear from J Money because there's all the things you touched on, are something I want to talk about as well. So J Money, rewatching it, you got more out of it this time as well.
Yeah, I think the first time I saw it, I probably was in high school, and I think thinking back on it now, I might have seen like an edited version of it. Like I might have actually just seen it on TV.
A PG version of it. It was so popular.
Oh, okay.
It was so popular. They actually re-edited it in theater, like in the middle of its run.
Really?
3 months into it, parents were complaining they couldn't bring their kids, and they re-edited a PG version, and
Really?
both versions are now available on video.
Oh, that's crazy. I must have saw the PG version because I totally do not remember just how dark and cynical.
There were whole scenes cut, and there were scenes added. There are scenes in the PG version that are not in the R version because
that's really interesting. Okay. Well, that makes me feel better about my memory to some degree because this was an entirely different movie than what I remembered, and I think it's interesting for me watching it now just because one, I'm living in Brooklyn, so there are neighborhoods they talk about and places they talk about that I'm like, yeah, I know where that is, and
not only that, but their film, I don't know if you've been to where Mike Phillips lives, but they filmed on his street, on his block.
Oh, really? He's in Sunset Park, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So on one hand, I could connect with it on that level. On another hand, it was the fact that it was such a dark movie, and not just a dark movie because dark things happen in it, but also because it had a very cynical attitude, and also because there's really no heroes in this movie. They're all kind of terrible people in a way. There's a lot of anti-hero stuff.
I mean, I think the whole point is Tony grows. In a way, in his own subtle way. I mean, if growing is just moving past your childhood friends.
No, I agree that there's definitely a growth of a character. It's certainly not one note throughout the movie, but like getting to that point is a painful process to watch. It's really hard to figure out what you're supposed to feel about any of these characters.
But in a way that feels honest. I mean, it's interesting that this is known as a disco movie the way it is, and it's funny that I feel like I'm heaping more praise on it than I did in the screening that I had. I mean, I think I was more of the deterrent because so many people enjoyed it. I always sort of naturally play devil's advocate.
But that's the problem with this. I think that people think of it as a disco movie, and it's not a disco movie. It's a movie that has disco as a vehicle for sort of disillusionment. But ultimately, it's about disillusionment. It's not about the disco itself. It's about this.
I mean, and in fact, Davie Jo talked about the religion, and you can really parallel Tony's journey with his brother's journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Tony's journey is a nice little sort of microcosm of what Tony goes through.
I mean, there were a lot of really uncomfortable moments in this movie, and things that I just was not expecting. There's a lot of really
there's rape, there's gang rape.
There's a lot of rape. There's a lot of really uncomfortable sexuality in general. There's a lot of really uncomfortable racial tension, which is understandable for the characters, but even so, it's presented in such a frank manner in a way that you just don't see anymore, really. I mean,
that is very much of the 70s. Like that's
exactly. And I think getting to your point about how this is such a cultural milestone, I also didn't realize when I saw it years ago how much it is about that time period. Not just because it's about these trends that are happening, but because it itself references pop culture in that time period so much.
In many ways, J Money and Davie Jo, it created pop culture. And I say that because disco was a thing. Disco was not a craze until this movie.
Well,
it created some. It made something. Because it made something seem like it was big, and then as a result, it became huge. And because the thing is, one more tidbit is this was based on a New Yorker article,
right?
And years later, the writer of the article said he made the whole thing up.
Right. I read about that too.
and so it is one that it was a work of quasi nonfiction that was actually fiction the whole time.
Yeah.
And so in many ways, Saturday Night Fever is important in the sense that it actually created this whole subculture, or it certainly propagated it.
Well, it's funny because it's such a first off it's a subculture just going in itself, but it's so concerned with vanity to a certain degree, and also to sort of creating this.
Narcissism is the word I used in our screening.
What's the word you used?
Narcissism.
Narcissism, yeah, I think that, but also in a hyper-real sense. It's trying to create this sort of fantastical idea and also fantastical images about yourself in a way that is completely fake, of course. So it's sort of like an endless loop of what is, the super real in the situation. I think it's funny that...
And that's true of Stephanie's character, too, if you think about it, in the way she is trying to constantly reinvent herself as a Manhattanite.
Everybody's constantly trying to reinvent themselves in a way that's really depressing. And the moment where he realizes what's going on is so disheartening in a way. It's so... I guess for me, I'm surprised that there wasn't something to kind of leave the viewer feeling upbeat about by the end of it. I mean, he survives the transition, but it's not a good process for anybody. And one thing that we pontificated about in our screening was the potential of how Tony Manero represents the young 20s, young male American psyche of the 70s. Well,
and he sort of represented it for the entire decade, and it was a really interesting, postulate.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's also a specific subsection of culture. It's not just youth, but also a certain section of working class youth. I mean, there's
socioeconomical situation has to be taken into consideration. Davie Jo, how do you feel about this idea that Tony Manero represents 70s man, 70s young man?
I mean, you know, I think that's what it was trying to do. I think that there's no question that
I don't think that the screenwriter necessarily had that much forethought into that's sort of like a post-screening read. But
here's what gets me about the movie. I mean, I think that,
bring it on, Davie Jo. Bring it on. Tell me what gets you.
All right, you've got this guy, and I look. This is a classic movie. It's from 1977, so I'm gonna kind of give some stuff away because I don't know how to talk about this movie without talking about the ending.
Yeah, for the classics, we do not need to.
Okay. All right. So here you've got a guy who is essentially attempting rape, and then 5 minutes later, the movie makes this ridiculous attempt to redeem him. And in the closing of the movie, to me, is so absurd. It's insulting. I really was upset when it ended the way it did.
All right, I'm going to argue with that. I mean, before we get to I do have a lot of negatives with the movie. I mean, like,
sure.
So sure. I am going to get to that to some degree. But I mean, I will argue, but that the end is, for the culture that it was. I mean, like the way that he treated her in the car, the attempted rape, was not that unusual. So to reconnect it the way that they did, you're taking a very modern point of view and applying it to this film. And for him to come over and say, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that," and for them to reconnect, because I assume that's what you're calling absurd. Am I wrong?
You think that she would forgive him that quickly? She would be okay?
Yeah, I kind of do.
They would be friends?
I mean, I think, and one of my complaints about the film, so this is a good segue, is I think a lot of those issues fall on Karen Lynn Gorney. There's a reason that this was her only real movie success. I think one huge flaw of the film is the performance of Karen Lynn Gorney as Stephanie. And I think that a better actress might have made you believe that moment a little more significantly. But I do buy, given the way that the movie sets up the culture of a Bay Ridge, 2001 Odyssey, disco scene, where like girls are having sex in the car like one at a time. I do buy that there was, because one thing you got to remember, one thing that came out in our screening is this is a pre-STD world, and so she was offended and she called him a rapist to his face, but it was more commonplace than you might think.
No, I'm sure it still is commonplace. I
don't think so. I don't think it's necessarily like, I mean, certainly, like people are going dancing. They're not going out like and taking turns having sex in the back of a car anymore.
No. I mean,
sex overall is a different animal.
But I think that rape is still very prevalent. But here's my point is that that's not the point though. The point is that the fact that she calls him a rapist and then is okay, like literally like a minute later.
It's not like she didn't know it.
Well,
like she knew him before that, and she knew that he was upset and drunk and all those other things. I mean, like, I bought it. J Money, you might like.
I kind of fall between you guys on this. I guess I would say that, on one hand, this is coming out at a time culturally when these things are a little more, I don't know, kind of given some free pass. On the other hand, I think her character itself was also, sort of the twin of what John Travolta's character was supposed to be in general. She is also this working class person who has tried to pull herself by her bootstraps out of this community and has sort of done it, but not quite done it yet. And she's just used to being in these situations. I think that she's used to being kind of drugged through the mud and gone through the meat grinder, and she's a little shell-shocked in and of herself. And I think that it's indicative that she knows how to respond to these things without necessarily being repulsed by them, because I think that she is from the same foundation as he is.
I agree. I agree.
I think that was actually one of the most interesting things about her character, and maybe that's what you're saying about the failure of her job as an actor, JB, is that she felt awkward in the situation, and on one hand it worked for her as the character. On the other hand, I also felt like she just didn't know what she was doing with the character itself.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
But I think that, it's funny because Davie Jo and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. We were actually comparing this to another movie set in New York from the early 90s. I don't know if Davie Jo, you want to talk about that or not.
You guys had a pre-discussion?
No, I made a quip. I made a quip about kids.
I hadn't thought about that. 1994.
Yeah, it had a lot of the same kind of feeling. It had a lot of the same.
I don't like, because like that. I don't feel like there's any hope in that movie, and I do feel like there's hope in this movie.
I guess I would say you're right about that, although the hope in this one is thin to me. We'd have to see the sequel to really see what happens. I don't know if you've seen it.
There is a sequel. There is a sequel.
Yeah, I didn't see a sequel. Is there a sequel?
There is a sequel.
1983.
I thought you were talking about
kids.
kids.
Who directed the sequel?
Stallone. Stallone directed it, right?
Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
Also, a little fun tidbit about Saturday Night Fever. We talked about her earlier. The 70s and 80s Sofia Vergara. Did you guys recognize Fran Drescher?
Yes. She stuck out.
Yeah.
She hadn't really aged in a lot of ways, in a weird way. Like, it was very obviously her.
You didn't see her, Davie Jo?
I didn't. I missed it. I'm sorry.
It was a small bit part, but she looked like Fran Drescher. So
she's the one that said to him, "Are you as good in bed as you are on the dance floor?"
Oh, I do remember the line.
So I just wanted to talk about the dancing, because I just want to point out that I do feel like, and you talk about the dark movie, but I feel like when there's dancing happening, I think the movie flies. I think the movie, except for the very final dance, which is a big anticlimactic, their final dance is extremely anticlimactic, and they deserve what they got.
Yeah.
No, they deserve. I mean, I guess they didn't deserve what they got. John Travolta's assessment of the situation was correct. But after all the practicing they're doing and the build-up to the hero's final dance, it was a huge disappointment. But all the dances before that, I mean, were outstandingly filmed. Compared to a lot of the other stuff, I mean, do you guys, before I go on, do you guys have comments on that?
I definitely do. I feel like I think it's almost like the last 10 minutes of the movie, they try and take you through this this redemption, and then basically they make you. He's supposed to have. We're
talking about the dance scenes right now.
But what you just said about how his assessment is supposed to show his sort of kind of racial enlightenment, I think, which it kind of does, because basically they win because they're white, and that's what he says. He said, no, we didn't really win, and so you're starting to think, well, maybe this guy, you're starting to kind of to sort of, they're redeeming the character, and they're kind of getting you behind him.
I see where you're going, but I mean, like, I feel like you're pigeonholing this guy. Because what you're about to say, just because you're taking so long, is right after that moment, he's redeemed, and then he tries to rape the girl, and then he's forgiven at the end. That's what you're gonna say.
Within what, 12 minutes? You think?
But I mean, but also, I mean, it's understandable. Like, I'm not saying rape is.
No, I understand you're not.
I'm saying, like, in terms of the character being as confused, he's a 20-year-old kid. As confused and frustrated and all those things that he is, and lustful for this woman that he's been in love with the whole movie, it is building up, and it is the outlet. It is not what your typical screenwriter would do necessarily because of the thing you're saying. But people don't have natural arcs. I mean, like, people's arcs are more like that, and it's a little more real.
Oh, I think. Look, all right. So we're gonna disagree on one point. I mean, I feel like you've got this whole.
Just one point. We're gonna disagree on.
You've got this whole movie. You've got this whole movie to do this, and they jammed it all into the last 12 minutes. That bothered me. But I
think throughout the movie. But I mean, I do feel like it feels loose because he's a confused kid, and probably forced to grow up more than he had. I think that there's I understand what you're saying, like in terms of like plot structure. Like it feels like he's grown up, and he has, but he's not fully there yet. He's a mess, and that's.
Yeah. I want to jump in for a second. I guess what I would say is the end of it isn't so much about the fact that he's just a loose kid as much as it's the fact that you see him at the beginning of this movie be so sure and so self-assured about what he's doing, and then by the end of the movie you see his entire world sort of crumble before his eyes, and it's devastating to him. It leaves him.
But he recognizes what is wrong, and that is the neighborhood, the kids he hangs out with. Like he's sort of he's starting to realize not that Manhattan's good and Brooklyn's bad necessarily, and if that is a message people get, then I think they missed the point. But just he's outgrown and realized their values are not necessarily the values that he needs to go live by. Whereas prior to that, those last few moments, he almost feels like he did need to do that. And I mean, and you were skipping the most important part. There's a tragedy in the middle of that, 12 minutes that you're skipping over completely.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about that because what did you think about? I felt like there's a point where they're like, all right, well, one of these two are going to kill themselves. Which one's it going to be? And it kind of, to me, the fact that they kind of made a game out of it.
The one that was going to kill themselves?
Oh, the girl who just got raped.
Yeah, she was threatening at one point as well there.
Oh, you're talking about the gang rape, because there's the rape of Carolyn Gorney, and then there's the gang rape of
the gang rape, yeah, right.
But with the gang, it didn't start out as rape, in fairness, but
sure, it became rape shortly thereafter.
That's splitting a hair in the situation, I think.
No. I mean, it is and it isn't in the sense that she put herself in a stupid situation. She made some choices.
No, that's not. I think you're.
No, I'm not justifying them, but I mean, like.
No, I know you're not.
She was trying to get even with Tony, and she said she said she's gonna have. She said I'm gonna have sex with the rest of the guys. It's in the middle of it that she decided she wanted to stop.
But getting back to my question though, I feel like they kind of made a game out of which one of these two is gonna kill themselves.
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to say because I'd seen the movie before, but I mean, I knew the answer. I didn't feel that. I don't know if I ever felt that she was suicidal.
Oh, I mean.
Well, she literally does threaten suicide, though, JB.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
At the very end, she's threatening to jump off the bridge, and Travolta comes over and comforts her, and that's when the other guy gets up on the bridge side embankment and starts going a little crazy.
I didn't like that. I thought it cheapened it. I thought it. I
can see that. I don't remember that. I guess, and it's again. I think the qualifiers. If she did say something like that, I might have missed it, knowing.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't remember that necessarily.
I want to try to bring us back to what you were trying to start to talk about, JB, was the dance scenes themselves, because I think that's worth kind of getting into a little bit as well.
I'm sorry.
Please.
I think it's interesting because, yeah, in a lot of ways there's so much grace and elegance in the way that they're shooting these dance scenes. I mean, they're interweaving themselves into this dance floor, which is very complicated. They're managing to get the energy down really well, and also they've got, Travolta's actually he's a pretty smooth guy just in general. I think they capture the way that he's breaking free of his bonds, the way that he's sort of growing with that idea as he thinks that he's developing what is his sense of freedom, really.
J Money. Davie Jo's finally nodding to something you're saying.
It was amazing.
But I think it's interesting that you were saying. I mean, I guess before I would ask you: are you saying that their final dance scene was bad, or are you saying that intentionally they were not doing it as well as they could have?
I think in terms of choreography, which is I'm saying his name is Danny Nucci. I could be wrong about that. I think the choreography was anticlimactic. I think it was a little too slow.
Well, wasn't it supposed to be? I guess my point was I thought it was, by the end of it, I thought it was supposed to be.
For sure. It was supposed to be different, but I mean, like, in terms of the context, I mean, like, I thought it would build. Because, the pieces of it that we saw in the rehearsals were slow, but I thought it would, like, build up to something, with a little more...
I mean, that was, I guess for me, that's what I really liked about it, because I felt like it was sandwiched between these two performances. The first one was actually also really energetic and really crazy. The last one was, like, professionally great. And you saw the fact that there were these two individuals that thought they were something really crazy, that thought they were like great dancers, who actually were just kind of pedestrian people in general that were trying to live this dream. Like the fact that it exposed them in the face of everybody else, to me, is what really worked with the film. That was the moment where things really fell apart for everybody, and that's what I really appreciated.
I mean, I guess that's true. I mean, I just sort of felt like, and maybe it's just a rooting interest, maybe I just wanted to see, a better foot forward. Because, I mean, I guess the other thing is, J Money, I mean, we've seen him do better. We've seen him do more interesting things.
Well, that's why I would argue that was very intentional. Because you're right.
I mean, no, so when you say intentional, maybe I misunderstood you. Do you mean intentional by the choreographer or intentional by the character?
Well, I guess intentional by both. I guess I feel like that was intentional. It was an intentional artistic decision for the movie. So I feel like they told the choreographer to make something that was a little bit more understated.
That I agree with.
I agree with that as well. But I mean, it felt like, after the build-up, it felt like a letdown, and I think that's poor direction in a way, and that's what I was leading to is how good the dance scenes are shot is how poorly a lot of the rest of this stuff is shot. Yeah, but John Badham. Interestingly enough, John Badham is the director of the show Davie Jo did on my old show Film Risen, was War Games, also directed by John Badham. So full circle for Davie Jo. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the rest of the movie doesn't necessarily have a lot of the energy in terms of the camera choices that the dance scenes do, and that's one of my issues with the movie. I also feel like there's some really strange choices overall that I think is all direction. First of all, he gave Carolyn Gorney no help at all.
Yeah.
A lot of and in cutting back to like the Barry Miller, I like Barry Miller's portrayal of the guy who goes over the bridge. But I mean, like, there's this one scene where Travolta's dancing and Barry Miller's trying to talk to the brother, and it's such a repetitive, like it takes him so long to get it out. It's just inefficient and unnecessarily, like I think there's like 5 times he tries to tell him what's going on.
Right.
And also, I thought the Barracudas fight was terribly shot.
I mean, it's a little campy, but the whole movie's a little campy, right? I mean, I guess I didn't.
Not the whole movie. I mean, I think some of the movie feels gritty, and I feel like part of that, because I mean, like it almost feels like 2 different movies in some cases, because some of the scenes with the guys, like the bridge stuff, are grittier. And it's interesting. The original, I don't know if you looked up the original director of this film. John Badham replaced. Same as John G. Avildsen, who the year before had won an Oscar for directing Rocky. And there's some similar story stuff going on with Rocky, and what Rocky people forget. People also think Rocky's a little cheesy, but what people forget about Rocky is a lot of the grittiness involved with Rocky's lifestyle that makes the film a little more special than I think people remember. And I think it almost feels like those scenes that work are directed by John G. Avildsen. In fact, Tony Manero even has a Rocky poster in his room, if you remember.
I mean, I don't think you can necessarily say that this, because there are gritty elements in this film, that it's not necessarily campy. I mean, there are gritty elements. I don't think that it's necessarily realistic.
No, but I mean, gritty elements in terms of the filmmaking style. Like some of the more handheld scenes and some of the scenes.
Sure, that's fair.
I mean, they feel different. And whenever John Badham tried to take the style from the dance floor outside of the dance floor, I think of this like very strange, very low angle shot of him when he's primping in the mirror.
Yeah. I love that shot. I think that's great because I think it really shows off. I don't want to be too vulgar about this, but it shows off a certain level of masculinity that they're trying to capture.
But I mean, like I think there's but I think it's inappropriate for the moment because I think there's a dichotomy between Tony Manero on the dance floor and Tony Manero in real life, and I feel like directorially you want to separate those as much as you can in terms of camera choices and camera style and editing style. Like they need to be, because the idea is he's different. He's alive on the dance floor. You know what I mean? Like he is a god on the dance floor, and he's just a regular guy outside that world. And,
but the fact of this,
be accentuated.
But the fact that it's all about the Emperor's clothing, right? I mean, I feel like he's a god on the dance floor, but he's a big fish in a small pond.
For sure, for sure. But all the more reason why those moments on the dance floor is a perfect time for that low angle shot, which strengthens a character, whereas high angle shots weakens a character. Those are perfect times for that. Outside of the dance floor, where he's like getting hit by his parents, and everything's messed up, and he can't get time with this older woman that he likes. Those are the moments when you want other kinds of filmmaking choices. So,
all right, I'll do that. That's fair.
I mean, it is certainly it's a taste thing, I think, or style. But I mean, it seems so clear to me in watching the movie that those moments where he brought some of the style that he had in the dance floor to the regular life, they didn't seem to match. And of course, the worst thing ever is that those dueling 360s, POV 360s,
yeah.
incidentally, will come up again. I don't want to reveal too much. That same shot will come up again in next week's classic movie.
Yeah.
It's off from this movie, and also is bad in next week's classic movie. So anyway, so before we do, I have one more complaint about Saturday Night Fever.
I have one more thing to say too, so you go first.
Oh, you have one more complaint?
No, well, not a complaint, just a thing about disco in general.
Okay. My final complaint is, and Davie Jo sort of touched on this, and I touched on it a little bit when we talked about Child 44, is that when there's too many when a film's trying to tackle too much, sometimes things get diffused. And I feel like with all the things that were going on with Tony Manero, between the socioeconomic situation, the dance situation, the religious situation, the familial situation, the racism in the neighborhood, the class situation between Brooklyn versus Manhattan, it diffused some of the moments, and the sex, all this, the sexuality of the time that they were tackling. It just felt like too much in some cases. As much as all that might have been a part of some of the people's lives, it felt a little unfocused. And I feel like the racism thing could have been hinted at, just with the dialogue and with the end. The Barracuda, I would have cut the Barracudas thing altogether. It just seemed a sidetrack and not a part of the movie. I'm sure there are other things I want to cut as well, but that's the one that I think is the most egregious. So.
Not by that. I mean, I guess I feel like it was a texture to the environment. I don't really, it's hard for me to sort of judge how they're using it in this situation just because of my distance from the film and when it came out. I mean, I don't know how people really reacted to what they were portraying. Were they reacting to the fact that they thought that they were acknowledging that there was this kind of racial tension in the neighborhood? Were they reacting to the fact that these people themselves were so sort of, stuck in this ruddy lifestyle about these different kind of racial issues? I mean, I don't really, I don't really know what the intended.
I felt like the first time they mentioned Spix, like that painted the picture for me. I didn't need them to have a Jets versus Sharks thing, and when it came about, it felt disingenuous. I mean, none of those guys seemed that tough to begin with. It's not like it dominated their lives. It's like all of a sudden they're in a war, and it's like
it sort of gave his friends something to do, and I also feel like it lended that it basically is kind of what pushed him away from them in the end.
Is it? I mean, I don't think it needed to be. I think there was other things going on there that created that situation.
Well, do you think it was trying to lend credibility to the idea of it being a rough and tumble situation then?
I mean, maybe, but I didn't even think it was that effective in that regard.
Would it have been effective to audiences in '77 though? I don't know. I'm asking sincerely. I don't know what people would have thought about that idea.
I mean, with all the slow motion way, way that was handled, I don't think so. I think it was a crappy fight to begin with and unnecessary anyway. So, Davie Jo, you've been quiet on this.
I'm kind of with Jay Money in that I'm not entirely sure. I almost feel like they were trying to paint the Travolta and his friends as being in the wrong, and obviously clearly racist, that they didn't want him to look too good in the fight. it's kind of like the end dance scene where they didn't let them look too good in the dance because they were trying to show racism. I don't know. Am I crazy?
I don't mind the end dancing. I just think I think without the Barracuda scene, I get the racial issues. Without, it just felt like a weird sidetrack. Just in terms of the flow of the film.
If it's choreographed well, though,
I still would have thought it was a weird, structurally.
Oh yeah, I mean, all right, okay.
J Money, you wanted to talk about disco.
Yeah, just one thing quickly. I guess it struck me during the film. Oh, are you doing the top 5? That's okay. I can.
No.
Okay.
The camera's on you, dude. I'm just prepping.
Oh, sorry. One thing quickly, I would just say is that it struck me while watching this film that it seemed like, you were saying in a lot of ways, JB, that this was at the height of disco. To me, it almost felt like the nadir. It almost felt like this is the point where things probably started to peak and then go downhill, because it felt like, a lot of things that were explored in this movie are what became the stereotype of what it meant for disco, and it is what became sort of the divisive, component in separating out a crowd between disco sucks and disco.
It's not. I mean, what was what the top-selling album of 1977 was?
The Bee Gees, I'm sure, but by 1979,
the highest-selling soundtrack of all time is.
But by 1979, August 1979, the day that disco died, there's a reason for that. I mean, there was a huge backlash that came out of that.
I know, but it died quickly. But I mean, like, this movie.
I guess what I'm saying, JB, is that I think that this movie cemented the stereotype of what it meant to be in disco, and I think that people felt so repulsed by certain characters that were portrayed in this film that it might have actually contributed to that. I think there's a reason that punk became so prevalent around the same time, and it's because it was the anti to the people that were portrayed in this film.
I mean, there is definitely a huge spike in disco and discotheques immediately after this film.
Oh yeah, definitely. This brought it to a popular level in a way, but that's why it became so unpopular. It's the kind of thing where
if anything that becomes that popular, there's this huge spike, and then
I don't think it's just that simple. I think that this movie was such a cultural tour de force that it defined what it meant to be in disco. It defined what it meant to be like somebody going to a club and being a participant of disco. And I think that is something that cultural, that crystallized in people's minds.
Well, I also think that anything that was if something, it's like it's a hipster mentality to some degree. If something cool becomes that popular, something sort of like that belongs to us in this Bay Ridge area, for example, and then it becomes nationally popular, then to that degree, because the level was popular is insane, and to the point where it's hard for us to really wrap our heads around it.
I mean, there's a great scene in this movie already, which sort of talks about the idea of this being popular. It's the scene where he's in the dance studio and that guy is teaching people how to dance, and then it's this plethora of people behind him that are clearly just there because it's disco and it's something to do.
You remember the song that he's teaching them to?
What's that?
You remember the song he teaches them to?
I can't remember right now. What's his song?
Disco Duck.
Disco Duck. Very good. And I thought that was really fascinating because it was definitely acknowledging the fact that as a trend it was something that people were understanding on a mainstream level. But I still think, I think even now when people say disco, they think Saturday Night Live. They think about the characters.
Saturday Night Fever.
Saturday Night Fever. They think about they think about John Travolta. They think about his character in this movie, divorced from all the grittiness and all the violence in this movie. But they think about the him on the dance floor, and that is the epitome of what disco is. That
white outfit is the epitome.
The white outfit, exactly. So I feel like I understand why that would become a divisive moment for the genre itself.
And in fairness, I meant to bring this up earlier, but this is actually Gene Siskel's favorite movie of all time.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise you?
I mean, it's a really gritty movie. It's a really dark movie.
And he bought the suit.
Did he?
He bought it at an auction.
I mean, Gene Siskel, as much as I like him over Ebert, he was a dick. I mean, he liked a lot of dick things. I mean, this is well known.
I mean, but I happen to agree with him more than Ebert as well.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Let me real quick. I just want to ask both of you guys. This movie, I mean, the main characters, the main characters, I plural. They're sort of these racist, misogynistic guys. And do you think that this movie was sort of trying to capitalize on that, or do you think it was trying to have it both ways and maybe appeal to the darker side of society and maybe try and sort of play it so that people people can kind of read it both ways. And
I don't understand what you're saying.
basically, what I'm saying is, was it trying to appeal to both the racists and misogynists in society at large, and try and play it off as some kind of commentary for the rest of us, or was it just social commentary all the way?
I'm going to say the latter. I can't imagine anybody trying to appeal to rapists.
I wasn't so sure. And that's why I really have a hard time getting behind this movie.
I think what you're asking is whether or not they were actually celebrating these characters or whether or not they were criticizing these characters. And I think what I would say is, in the end, they were criticizing them.
Yeah, certainly criticize some of their behaviors, but I mean, I think that they also want to paint this picture of, bring us back to Chappie to some degree, nature versus nurture. I mean, I think they're trying to sort of paint the picture of what life is like and what this socioeconomic situation in this part of the world, what it creates.
Yeah, I think it's almost like they were saying that these were despicable qualities, but they were also getting a free pass because they were from this sort of background, this neighborhood. And it's the kind of thing where I don't think you would get a free pass on that anymore. If they try to make a movie like that now, you don't get a free pass with those characters. You end up, those characters end up being the bad guys ultimately, one way or the other.
That's my point. Is that if they made the movie now, I would feel more comfortable in that it was commentary and that it wasn't trying to appeal to
Sure.
the. Anyway, I don't know.
One last comment. I was going to skip it, but we're here, and before we move on, I just want to give a little bit of props to. We haven't talked about Donna Pescow as Annette. And I do think that she layers this otherwise sort of two-dimensional character. I think it's a poorly written character that she performs well, and I did want to acknowledge her. Also, there's the 2 Degrees of Situation, because Donna Pescow's other major role. Did anybody know her TV role?
No.
No.
She was the mother on a show called Out of This World, which those of you that know my work know that the daughter and the main character in the show is Maureen Flanagan, who is in my film Homecoming. And Donna Pescow there played her mother. It was the plot of the show, if you recall, was Maureen was a alien, half alien, looking like a human girl who touched her fingers together and could freeze time. And Donna Pescow is her human mother, and Burt Reynolds is her alien father, who you only heard his.
Oh my God! I mean, why is pop culture not doing this anymore? I don't understand. These were golden times.
I used to love that show, and I mean, I had a huge crush on Maureen when I was, and she's not that much older than we are, but
make it happen, JB.
What's that?
Still make it happen.
We're still obviously in contact. But yeah, when I got to cast her, 15 years after having a crush on her, it was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, all right, now we're gonna move on. You guys ready?
Yeah.
All right. So before we get to the brackets, we're gonna do our top 5, and our top 5 comes from Saturday Night Fever this week. So we're gonna try our top 5 dance movies. Sutton, did you manage to cobble together 5 after we talked you through some?
No.
You're still at 3.
I got really 2, but let's go ahead and talk about it. I'll chime in maybe if you say something that I remember.
Right.
Okay, so anyway, J Money, that means you get to go first with your number 5.
All right. I would say with number 5, Saturday Night Fever actually climbed to the number 5 spot for me. I think that I just ended up appreciating this film much more than I remembered, and I also think it's legitimately an interesting film, regardless of all the problems it has, and regardless of what you might think about everything that happens in it. It's a pretty interesting dance film in the end.
Agreed. It didn't make my top 5. There's some of the poor direction, some of the silliness, which is also be said about this film. But I enjoy this film a little more. My number 5. I'm going with Dirty Dancing, and like as far as Davie Jo is concerned, this might be the only dancing movie he knows. But here's the thing about Dirty Dancing is I didn't see it till later in life, similar to you and Saturday Night Fever, J Money. It was predicted. I went with Jen actually in 2007 at the Ziegfeld. We were talking about the Ziegfeld earlier off camera. They were doing it was a 20-year anniversary, and so I took Jen and my little sister, and we went. And I'd never seen it, and I had friends that were like, "You're gonna hate that movie. It's so everybody loves it, but it's so silly." and it was fun. It was just really enjoyable. And the Jennifer Grey character had a lot of depth, I thought, for a teenage character. And then 2 years ago, it played, or maybe 3. It played at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where I lead group outings. I don't know. It's similar to Bryant Park out here, outdoor screenings on a lawn, except in a cemetery. And they played it, and let me tell you, it was the second most fun I've ever had seeing a movie in a group.
Wow.
It was like everybody got into it, everybody's singing along. It was such a great group experience that it colors my feeling about the movie, because I saw Saturday Night Fever in that same venue in 2010, I mentioned earlier. And I saw Dirty Dancing a couple of years ago, and it was so fun, and people would get up and dance, and they would sing along. It was a great experience, and it's not a bad movie that gets that kind of reaction.
Can you tell us the most fun you had in a group setting?
Yeah, re-release of I'm grouping these together, but the re-release is also at the Ziegfeld. The re-releases of the 3 Star Wars films in 1997.
Oh, okay, all right.
I went to the midnight screenings. You didn't live here yet. Neither of you lived here yet. You were both in college at the
I saw that in Syracuse.
Yeah. I went to the midnight screenings, and I didn't dress up, but people would dress up and pulling out the lines of the movie. It was awesome. It was awesome.
Did they do that in Bryant Park too, or?
I don't think they've ever shown Star Wars in Bryant Park that I'm aware of. They've shown The Wizard of Oz. They did a cool two-night Gone with the Wind thing in like 2000, I think the year 2000 they did that. But I think they did Raiders of the Lost Ark one year and I missed it. Superman and Rocky were fun there. But yeah, Star Wars at the Ziegfeld, all 3 of them were awesome. And I brought some cute chicks with me too. It was good. Anyway, so J Money, do you want to do your number 4? Before we do that, hold on, Davie Jo, do you have a comment on Dirty Dancing, or so you want to save it?
Dirty Dancing is on my very short list.
Okay, so we'll skip it. J Money.
Well, Dirty Dancing is actually my number 4, so there you go.
Nice. All right. And I also have it above Saturday Night Fever, so we're in sync there. So I'm going to go to my number 4, which is I think also on Davie Jo's list, and I know it's also on your list. The most recent member of the list, and maybe in time it'll be a little higher because the other 3 films I have on here are a little older. And such an intense psychological thriller. This is a film that's had a little backlash. Obviously, I assume I know you guys know it. I assume the audience knows from the picture I'm talking about, Black Swan. And from 2010, this movie came out and won an Oscar for Natalie Portman. She's tremendous. It's a great psychological film with some great ballet sequences. It's more of a psychological film than a dance movie, but I think it qualifies, and I think that ballet-wise, I want to give a special shout-out to The Red Shoes. Michael Powell's The Red Shoes is a great film, and I thought about that one, but Black Swan is a little more comprehensive and compelling in its approach towards the mental illness of this girl. So I guess we'll save it for you guys to comment on it, because I think it's coming up for both of you. Is it your number 3, J Money?
It's not my number 3.
Okay, so you may go with your number 3 then.
My number 3 is Hairspray, the 1988 version of Hairspray, specifically the John Waters film starring Ricky Lake, which is a movie that involves big dance numbers, but is also ostensibly about a dance scene. It's about racial integration in Baltimore in 1962 involving 2 interracial couples dancing. So I feel like it definitely qualifies in this situation.
It's interesting that it also sort of, in its own situation mirrors, in that regard, the other film that I told you probably didn't qualify. It has similar...
It has some similar qualities to it, sure. I'm a fan of John Waters in general. I'm a fan of this movie because it's so outsized and ridiculous and campy, and it's also just a lot of fun at the end of the day. I think it's kind of a movie that inspires people to sing along and to dance along and to enjoy themselves. It's infectious in a way that, and I don't really respond to infectiously dancing movies, but I responded to this one.
I don't love the film, but I did like the Broadway production. Excuse me. I did not like the film of the Broadway production, the more recent film.
I didn't see the film, the Broadway, the recent one. It looked terrible, honestly, and I just didn't want to ruin the experience.
But it's John Travolta in a dress. John Travolta, full circle.
Yeah.
Davie Jo, have you seen Hairspray?
I have not.
Okay. All right. So for my number 3, I've got a little picture montage here that I want to share with you guys. I want to talk about it a little bit. I don't know if I should put the pictures up or not first. Maybe I'll put myself up first. So my number 3 is it is probably my favorite film out of the top 5 that I have. But when looking at it from a dance perspective, although it is considered a dance film and the primary focus of it is dance, the actual dancing is if you really think about it, not so much dancing as it is visual camera magic. And I'm talking about Busby Berkeley. I should have probably cut somewhere else first, and that's probably not the picture I even wanted to put up. This is a film called Gold Diggers of 1933. Which is in. Have you seen it?
No, I've never seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
It is from 1933. So Busby Berkeley, I mean, like, his characters did not, like, they did their dancing, but mainly they just swayed back and forth, and it was considered dancing, but really, and there's some occasional tap, but really what he's known for are shots like this. This is an overhead, and and creating shapes, also moving the camera through the legs of all these quote-unquote dancers. The camera moved more than the actual dancers do. So it's not, I mean, it is a dance film. I don't think you can argue with that. But I mean, like, it's actually not really dancing in the traditional sense that we think of it today. It's really just the camera dances in anything. I also just wanted to, Davie Jo, I assume you've not seen Gold Diggers of 1933.
I have not, sorry.
No, it's fine. You guys might want to hold off because it is on the list of films I'm supposed to screen in Los Angeles in the near future. But
I mean, I'm a big fan of Berkeley, even though it's funny, I've never seen any of his films. I've only seen clips, but I'm a big fan of him just because I feel like he's a very design-oriented director in the sense that
sure. And there's some crazy numbers in this movie. And the picture I had up earlier, this is from a thing called Pettin' in the Park. And the thing about Gold Diggers 1933 and a lot of these films, it's right on the verge of when the code was being established, the production code. Somebody's, be careful that you're making some sound. Somebody hit their mic or something. So this number is called Pettin' in the Park, and it is basically about exactly what you might think. The title of the song is very what's the word I'm looking for? It is not subtle. That's exactly what it's about. It is not subtle about trying to suggest it is about having sex in the park. And this is just the start of it, and it just goes on and on and on. And the film itself, by the way, is about. The title is also very accurate. It is literally about these dancing girls, Broadway dancing girls, that try to find men that they will have sex with in order for them to marry them and get money, so they don't have to work on Broadway anymore as dancers. So this is also part of Pettin' in the Park. And these numbers are like 10 minutes long. These dance numbers, quote unquote dance numbers. And here on the left is Baby Leroy. And Baby Leroy is a big part of the Pettin' in the Park number because he's technically a midget dressed up as a baby, and he runs around like looking under girls' skirts throughout the whole dance number. He appears, throughout it. And at one point they actually get changed behind a curtain.
Mm-hmm.
You see their silhouettes changing, and all very visually pleasing. You don't see what's happening, and they come out wearing chastity belts. And this is Baby Leroy giving the guy a can opener at the very end of the number to suggest a way around their metal chastity belts. And that's just, it gives you a small sampling of what, not just Gold Diggers 1933, but actually Busby Berkeley did 3 movies in 1933. His 3 best films, Gold Diggers 1933, Footlight Parade, and 42nd Street, all came out in the same year. 42nd Street is maybe the best known. Gold Diggers 1933 is I think, the best because of how how much it flirts with sexuality. I mean, their most famous number from the film, I didn't get any pictures of this, is "We're in the Money," which has my favorite actress of all time, Ginger Rogers, singing in Pig Latin. It's the hottest thing of all time. But "We're in the Money" is basically a song about prostitution. I mean, "We're in the Money" is a song during the Depression, and these hot girls, and if you listen to the lyrics and the way that the dance the songs, we're in the money because we have sex for money. And it's not said in that way, but I mean it's really suggested. And throughout this film, time and time again, sex is toyed with in a way that you don't see again in movies for 50 years after that, because of the production code that would come later.
He was a director that was also very open with his own sexuality, right?
What's that?
Well, I thought that he was a director that was also very open with his own sexuality in Hollywood.
Say that it was too fast. I'm not hearing you.
I'm sorry. I'm saying that wasn't he also known for being fairly open about his own sexuality within Hollywood?
Busby Berkeley?
Yeah.
He was bisexual. That's
what I'm saying. Like it felt like he was sort of notoriously bisexual and also fairly comfortable with exploring it in an open manner.
I mean, I don't know, but I know that I just know that these things are.
He's very comfortable like embracing sexuality as sort of a visceral thing in general in his movies, and it seems like he's very comfortable celebrating it. And it's interesting that everybody's really comfortable with him doing it as well for some reason.
Well, I mean, the other thing these numbers do is huge political statements. Especially towards the end of each of these films. Gold Diggers 1933. This is a song called "You've the Forgotten Man" number, and it's a 15-minute, like basically a short story and you can see visually it's beautiful. This is actually the last shot of the film, but it's essentially about returning war heroes, World War I heroes that were starving and hungry during the Depression. They're the quote-unquote forgotten man. They fought for your country, and it's this huge uplifting movie that all of a sudden it ends on this huge political statement. And even 42nd Street, the other movie that came out that year, has also a 15-minute dance number at the end that has tap and shows how lively 42nd Street of New York is. And in the middle of the dance number, there's a murder. I mean, it's and then they go back to tapping. And then they have a huge shot of the Empire State Building, and at the end, they have the word asbestos, and it closes on that. Because at the time, Empire State Building was being built, and there was a concern about the environmental nature of building such a tall building. In the middle of this, fun-loving, sexy dance movie. Anyway, what I like about Gold Diggers 1933 is how it works on many different levels, and how it deals with these themes. And has the courage to deal with a lot of these things that a lot of films don't, even though they're quote-unquote dance movie / musical situations. So, but it was hard to call it a dance movie, call it the top dance movie, because of there's not actual, the tapping is not dancing enough. And quite frankly, Ruby Keeler, who's the star of all these movies and the lead dancer, is not that good. You put her next to Jimmy Cagney in Footlight Parade, and it's almost a joke. So anyway, sorry for I feel strongly about that film, and I wanted to explain it to you guys because I had a feeling you hadn't seen it.
Go on.
I'm done. You can do your number. We're up to number 2, so Davie Jo can chime in.
Davie Jo can chime in finally.
Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing. There we go.
Well, it's on all our list. It's on our list, and nobody's had Footloose so far. So we'll see if that comes up. Do we need to say more about Dirty Dancing?
No.
Are you guys annoyed I talked so much about Gold Diggers in 1933?
Did not expect that to happen. No.
No. I mean, I was fascinated. No, it was good. I want to see it now, so that's great.
Okay. J Money, are you annoyed?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. You're number 2.
Spoiler alert. First off, no, Footloose is it's not on my list. My number 2 is All That Jazz. A movie that I greatly appreciate, in part because I think it's a movie that I saw very early on that was one of the first times I saw a movie really play with a character's perception of reality throughout the entire movie. It was something that I think took me by surprise because it wasn't what I was expecting in the movie itself. and it really kind of affected me in the way I thought about narrative structure in general. So it's something that I actually really like a lot, and I really like Roy Scheider's performance in this movie. I really like a lot of the darkness in this movie. So on a whole, it's just a movie I like. It happens to have dancing in it. It happens to be about Fosse, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's an autobiographical thing.
Yeah, but it's like regardless of who it was about or how they did it, I just really enjoyed the structure of this movie.
It doesn't just have dancing. It has what I think is one of the best individual numbers of all time, from a choreography point of view, and it's also an extremely sexy number. The airplane, I forget the actual name of the song, but the airplane song, the airplane number. I don't know if you remember it. I have a little photo of it here.
Yeah.
And Davie Jo, you have not seen this, I presume?
No, sorry.
All these people take their clothes off in the number. It's true. But from a choreography point of view, it's outstanding. And also, I mean, like the whole third act of the movie is all dancing. Like you said, that it has some dancing in it, like almost dismissively. But the whole third act, when he's in the hospital and he's having this sort of, and he even dreams. He has these all sort of fever dreams going through his history. These dance representations of his history. This dream sequence. Do you remember?
Yeah, but I guess what I was saying was that I felt like the dance was more about sort of a fantastical element to the narrative than it was about anything else to me.
I feel like it advanced the narrative, and each one.
Yes, it advanced the narrative. That's why I guess I think of it differently than I would think of like a typical musical, which usually uses dance as an entertainment part of the show. To me, this was really more integrated into it, and that's why I guess I sound dismissive about it, because to me it was actually something that was very necessary in a way,
Yeah, well, I mean, even the way that he has a Bubsy Berkeley number in the middle of that fever dream.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Referencing other choreographical styles or dance styles. Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite Bob Fosse movie, but it's also my number 2, which is why I put it. So, and we could explore it. I doubt we'll have the same number 1. I'd be surprised.
I can guarantee we will not have the same number 1 at this point.
Guaranteed.
Yep.
Okay, so Davie Jo, Black Swan, I presume.
Yeah, good guess. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but I remember thinking I didn't realize Natalie Portman had it in her. It was
Closer. Have you seen the film Closer?
No, I haven't seen Closer.
Phenomenal, that movie.
Okay, I have to check that out. I had seen Star Wars. I was not as impressed.
I've also seen Natalie Portman on stage. In The Seagull, and also she was oh my gosh, Anne Frank. So I did know that she had it.
Well, she sure did. She deserved that Oscar. It was an amazing performance.
Great.
And I'm a Aronofsky fan, so I not that I should be getting into it, but
we need to get you to see some more dance movies.
I know. All right. Well, I'll make it a point. No, I won't. But
Ouch! Come on. All right, number 1, J Money. You surprise me.
Do you want to guess? I mean, at this point.
Do I want to guess?
It's a pretty obvious guess at this point.
Is it?
Yeah.
I guess. It was going to be Black Swan, I guess.
It's Black Swan. Yeah, you're right. It's Black Swan. Number 1, Black Swan for me.
I forgot that you hadn't had it on there.
I haven't.
It's pretty high, Black Swan.
It's honestly, it's not just the fact that it's at the top of my dance list. I actually think it is one of my favorite movies the last, I don't know, 10 years at least. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed.
Right.
It's a very simple movie in a lot of ways. It's not like it's a great masterpiece, but I found it very highly effective and also highly amusing because of the way that it handles this woman's breakdown. Basically, it handles the way that she kind of comes apart at the seams. I just really enjoyed watching it. I just really enjoyed the process, and I really enjoyed the performances.
Yeah, I'm surprised you like it as much as you did, actually. I was pleased when it was on your list. I'm surprised it beats All That Jazz, but I mean, and I just give it. My qualifier is I don't know if All That Jazz has had the time to sit with me a little more. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes the more I'm more prone to do some older movies. Just having see how the impact it creates. I mean, I think it's a strong film. Obviously, it was on my list.
I think that should be. I think I respect All That Jazz more, but I like Black Swan more, and that's why it's probably at the top.
Yeah, I mean, and I prefer Cabaret to All That Jazz in terms of Bob Fosse's work as a film director.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like when you start factoring in the dance, that's what put All That Jazz ahead for me. But yeah, I mean, Black Swan. I mean, I had it maybe my number 2 or 3 film, I think, that year, 2010. Yeah, so I mean, I don't have much to complain about with it. So
Cool.
it feels a little high, but I mean, you probably have not seen the film that is my number 1.
Probably not. Step up.
Because I'm going old school again.
Electric Boogaloo.
I thought about Electric Boogaloo, not as being on the list, but anyway. I thought somebody might make the joke about it, and they did. So this is Fred and Ginger, and what you wouldn't know is this is from a movie called Swing Time, which is the best of the Fred and Ginger films. And I assume have you guys ever seen a Fred and Ginger film?
No.
They are really good. And I mean, and this maybe goes back to examples. And this is the director of this particular film is George Stevens, who had a huge career, the rest of his career in Hollywood, directing such classics as Gunga Din and A Place in the Sun, Giant. I mean, he was a big-time director with an emphasis on story. And I mean, certainly this might be one of Davie Jo's examples of films with a plot that is sort of trite, but the charm of these two actors and dancers is extraordinary. It's a lovely film. It does feature a little bit, one number of Fred Astaire in blackface, but it's in a tribute to Mr. Bojangles. So, it's certainly at the time it was not like something that was as looked down upon.
Sure.
If you don't know, but if it's not, you know what I mean. Like it's hard to. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And in fairness, it was a tribute to an African American dancer. Anyway, but it's a simple, sweet story, and their charisma is outstanding, and the dancing is magical. Like it's magical. It's actual dancing, and don't knock Ginger Rogers. I mean, like people think about Fred and Ginger, and they think mostly Fred. I think, but I mean, I think I said earlier with Gold Diggers that Ginger Rogers is my favorite movie star of all time. That's true. I mean, like. In addition to the dancing, the personality, she had acting chops. She actually won an acting Oscar. A lot of people don't know that. She was Best Actress in 1940 for a film called Kitty Foyle. And she had a wide range. She was a great comedian. She was a great dancer. She was great at drama. And she was also kind of nice to look at. So Fred and Ginger, Swing Time. And there's a lot of great Fred and Ginger films. The Gay Divorcee, Top Hat come to mind, but Swing Time I think is the strongest and my number 1 dance movie.
Cool. Good.
So is that going to be the first thing you rent this week, my man?
Oh yeah.
Davie Jo, camera's on you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Davie Jo. I'm a little insulted here now.
He gets so little camera time. All right, guys, moving on. In the home stretch, but we have to close our circles here and do our classic movie showdown. So this will be a fun debate potentially. And one thing I do want to say about the classic movie showdown is like a lot of people says. I mean, I think last week you guys were like comparing apples and oranges and like what's the point of all the comparisons and things like that? What's the end game? And I think. That's come up a couple times, and my answer to all that is it's basically a format to encourage the watching of these older films and the discussion of such. So, I can understand like, oh, what's the point of comparing these movies? Like, who cares? And sure, maybe that's the case. It doesn't mean anything. We're not gonna like whoever wins. We're not gonna run to their house and give them an award. But I think it encourages the watching of these films, which is ultimately my main goal. Do you guys have anything you want to say about that?
That makes sense. I mean, I would encourage you. I'm glad that you're bringing them up. I'm glad that you're reminding people that they exist. I think it's important for us to review these things.
Yeah, and I think the echoing. I think that what's happening. I think this is creating it creates excitement about watching these old films. Like Saturday Night Fever versus whatever, and that it gets people to watch them and then have the discussion, regardless if it's apples and oranges or not. So tonight's bracket is the 70s bracket, and so here is our matchup for the evening. Saturday Night Fever's 14 seed goes up against number 3 seed Jaws, which we screened at an outdoor screening in July of last year. So it fits the rules. Films, people that attended both screenings got to vote. They saw both films in my presence over a 12-month period. So before I reveal the winners, what do you guys have to say? Davie Jo, you've seen both. I think I know your answer.
Jaws, definitely Jaws.
Because it's less dark.
Yeah, Is
Saturday Night Live? Is Saturday Night Fever darker than your camera right now?
Nothing could be this dark. I forgot my camera, and I'm using the laptop camera, and it sucks, man. But what are you gonna do? I don't know. Jaws is to me it's the first horror movie I ever really remember. I think it's a horror movie. I classify it as a horror movie. And I think it's, or at least a monster movie. Does that, no? How about that? Is it a monster movie?
Okay, I mean, maybe.
Okay, all right. Anyway, to me, it's I guess it is to that what Saturday Night Fever is to dance movies, and you can see how much I value dance movies. So I'm gonna go with Jaws.
That's a fairly concise explanation. I'll buy that. J Money.
I mean, I've also seen Jaws the musical, so I feel like maybe they're a little more evenly pitted than. Have
you seen Saturday Night Fever the musical though?
Isn't Saturday Night Fever kind of already a musical?
I know, but it was on Broadway.
Was it really? That sounds awful.
In 1999, 2000, and it was. Obviously, I said some good things about the movie, but the musical was the worst thing I've ever seen in my. It
sounds to me like they were trying to capitalize on Mamma Mia, and they were like, "Here's the movie with this girl."
And the lot. There's this. My friend and I that saw it together. We always I went with a girl, a female friend, and there's this line in the movie that we just need to say to each other. We'll start cracking up. Right around the time that the movie's so dark, Tony in the play, Tony goes up to her. He's like, "I ain't gonna jump you no more."
It's good for us.
And the audience cracked up, and they weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so yeah, and not to say anything against Saturday Night Fever, which I have come out now as legitimately liking, but Jaws for me would be the one that would take this for me.
Well, interestingly enough, it was a battle. It was a battle on at the screening, and there was a lot of back and forth, and the people that had to vote were torn more than I thought they would be. I thought this would be, like you guys said, I thought this would be an easy ride for Jaws. It was not unanimous, and it was an intense discussion because a lot of people argued that Saturday Night Fever, actually said more about social issues and social society, and therefore was more impactful, and yet. The winner was Jaws by 2 votes. It was fairly narrow, surprisingly narrow, and that's what's fun about these things. I do get surprised, even though Jaws, did wind up winning. The fact that there was even some dissension was really interesting.
I mean, I guess I would say it's almost like you're pitting 2 entirely different styles of movies. It on one hand, Saturday Night Fever is very much about a time and a place, and it's very indicative of a certain cultural period. Whereas Jaws has a little bit more of a universal theme that seems like it would supersede whatever time period it was created in.
That's a fair point. That's because Saturday Night Fever it captures a certain place in time and is almost like in a time capsule.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my host has come in. It seems like a perfect time since did we lose Davie Jo incidentally?
Oh no, did we?
We did, which is perfect time because we've now got a third person here. Greg, you want to come in?
This is live here.
It is live. We got no viewers.
I'm a big fan of but with no viewers.
And we're stalling for time because our other person. You remember Jay Money? You met him a couple times.
Hello, sir.
Hello, how's it going?
Good.
We lost our. Are you texting him? Is that?
I'm going to if you'll. Yeah, hang on.
We're almost done though. So as you can see, we had this discussion. This was an LA bracket combination. You see this?
Okay.
You see the graphic there? The brackets.
I do.
We do.
Who made that graphic? It's very nice.
This guy did, Jay Money.
Hey, hello.
He makes lots of graphics for us. You should watch our show sometime.
You need some viewership.
Do you like? Well, people watch it after the fact. Do you like how I use all your kids' stuff as set design?
Hey,
do you have an opinion on this Jaws vs. Saturday Night Fever thing?
100% Jaws.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
It was not unanimous in Los Angeles.
Really?
Yeah. Have you seen Saturday Night Fever?
Pieces, certainly, but I'm not sure.
Well, maybe you should watch it before you opine. Any word from our man?
I haven't gotten anything yet, so I don't know.
I'm gonna start with the closeout. Oh, and yeah, there was one thing I forgot to do.
All right, he is currently disconnected, so I don't know if we want to just kind of.
We lost the internet altogether, huh?
Yeah.
All right, so it's time for. Oh, I did the wrong thing. Press the wrong button. It's time to talk about next week's movie. I had a picture to show you guys. Uh-oh. Did you give me a graphic for next week?
Oh, I might not have, because I don't know if we had decided at that point.
You're right. I don't have one. So all right, stall for 10 seconds, and I'm gonna do something for you.
Okay. Blah 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 blah. I mean, what are you doing?
You're doing such a great job of the stalling.
Thank you. I appreciate that. A little tap dancing thing here and there.
Why don't you say more about your favorite film that we've talked about tonight?
What was that? I'm not even sure which one it was at this point. What did we even talk about tonight? I'm totally lost.
Well, it wasn't Hot Pursuit.
Was it Black Swan? Is that what we're talking about? No, I think that we had a really good. I think there was some really nice parallels actually between what we were talking about with Hot Pursuit and Saturday Night Fever. I think that there was, there was actually a lot of gender politics that came into our discussions tonight between all the different movies we were talking about, and I don't know. It's too bad that things didn't quite work out better for some movies, but it was we had some interesting things to break down in all of them.
Is Davie Jo back? Oh, he said not looking good is the latest. Davie Jo. At least it came out like at the very, very end, because I don't think he even cares about this next movie thing.
Probably not. Wrap it up. Let's go.
All right. Well, I was trying to do something cool here, but
let's just come on. Let's just say it. Let's just say what we're gonna do. It's fine.
Hold on. Give me just 2 more seconds, and I'll see if this will work.
Yeah.
I got it. It's gonna work.
All right. I'm gonna
so
okay.
at the AMC that you and I are going to tomorrow night, I found these 2 posters next to each other. One of these will be our movie for next week. It's either Mad Max or Even Tempered Max. We won't tell you. One of those 2 movies is going to be the movie that we review next week. No, it's
really Mad Max. That Max Dog movie looks pretty good. I don't know what that is, but
it's going to be Mad Max, and we're going to have our top 5 is going to be our top 5 films by Australian directors, I believe. Isn't that what we agreed upon?
I think so, yeah.
And we're also going to have a new indie of the week and a classic movie of the week, which is I don't know I don't know how much debate it's going to have, but as always, I play devil's advocate, so I think there's going to be a good discussion about the classic next week if any of them decide to watch it. And that leads us to the end. But I do want to say that our next broadcast is only in 5 days, May 19th at 8:30 this time.
Yeah, let's do that.
Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. We're all on the East Coast this time. And I will be broadcasting live from Weehawken, New Jersey, technically, just across the river from New York. And 18 miles away will be my buddy Jay Money. And Davie Jo will probably have internet back in his hotel in Detroit.
Who knows? This is Detroit.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks very much. We are under 2 hours on this episode.
Thumbs up.
We are just
Amazing.
2 hours, an hour and 54 minutes. But at least it's shorter than our Avengers show. Great show though, J Money.
Great show, JB. Of course, as always. Thanks for being host. We always appreciate it.
Look who's back just in time.
Just in time.
So who won? Was it Jaws? The Jaws won?
Yes, Jaws won by a narrow vote.
Yes.
And also we had a guest in. We had our first guest on the show.
Oh, I missed it?
Yeah. He wanted to say hello to you. Greg, do you want to say hello? He's in his. I think he might be in the bathroom. He might be masturbating.
He's done.
Anyway, closing thoughts, J Money. I was literally about to hit stop.
Everybody should see.
Actually, sorry, I meant Davie Jo. Davie Jo, you have your closing thoughts. Davie Jo, closing thoughts.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed it. I was so worried I was gonna miss who won. I'm glad I caught you guys. Hey, I think this was our best show yet, and it's better, man.
You are so drunk still.
It was our best show yet because you were drunk during the broadcast.
I was not drunk.
And we had our first guest star who's closing the door to his bedroom.
Sure we did. Whatever.
It was a good show. I'll have to reevaluate.
The first guest.
You're the first guest star, yeah.
Wow.
You're right here. Wow. And you missed our third panelist who lost his internet connection. See how fast and loose we play in this show?
No problem.
Never watched the show.
Did you ever have any viewership?
No, sometimes we have viewers online, but I don't think
I know. I just meant tonight.
Tonight, no.
You guys were able to talk for 2 hours with no one watching.
But people will watch this.
Amazing. That takes talent right there.
You know what, JB? This is appropriate because we're talking about a movie that has a lot of disillusionment, and now we are getting our disillusionment period right now. He is breaking us down, and I'm gonna go jump off a bridge now.
As long as it's the Vergara Bridge.
Which one's it gonna be, though?
Yeah, there's so many choices. The Brooklyn's really much closer.
But it has to be the Vergara for the parallel with Saturday Night Fever.
I mean, which one of us is gonna jump? You don't know.
One of you. Conveniently, the Brooklyn's right here, so.
Oh, you got to make the extra trip. You got to go the extra distance.
Probably true.
Anyway, now I'm going to say goodbye, Davie Jo. And next week you let us know if you really think this week was our best week when you're sober.
Yeah.
You know, it was also an hour and 56 minutes, right? We are second longest show of all time.
How did that even happen?
I don't know.
So fast.
We talked about Hot Pursuit for 21 minutes.
That could have gone on for hours.
I mean, I guess my Gold Diggers discussion, maybe that was only an extra 2 minutes.
That was at least an hour.
It was like a 30-minute rant. Yeah, I don't know how long that was. That went on and on. Anyway, it's fine.
I learned my lesson. Sorry. All right, guys. Good night.
Bye, guys. Bye.